As we've asked a few times about these Tom Talks, we've asked you to please reach out to family and friends and even your neighbors who may have something to share with us. And the Liberty family was kind enough to ask a friend of theirs to come and speak to us today, Mrs. Kristen Anton. And a little bit of background: she went to Salem High School, where she was the class valedictorian, and from there she went to Stanford University, where she earned a degree in biology, and then to Boston University for her master's in biomedical engineering. She is currently the director of bioinformatics at Dartmouth-Hitchcock, and she has taught computational molecular biology at Dartmouth College. Her work is funded by the National Cancer Institute and is in collaboration with NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Mrs. Anton was part of a team that was awarded the prestigious NASA Group Achievement Award. And Isabella Liberty has known Kristen her entire life and looks up to her as a role model, a mentor, and most importantly, a dear friend. And hopefully she'll become a mentor and a role model to all of you. With that, this is Kristen Anton.
Intimidating to talk to high schoolers, so I'm going to try not to be too nervous. The title of my talk is Tumors and Planets, and I understand that the start of every Tom Talk to the prompt, what drives you, is usually someone's car. In my case, it's the Mars rover Curiosity. But my rover's taken me from Salem, the home of the Salem witches, to Stanford, where I studied biology, to Boston University, where I studied engineering, and then for 6 years to MIT postgraduate to put all of that together for computational biology, and then I finally got a real job at Dartmouth in data science. So I don't know if anybody knows what data science is. Sort of a funny term, but we data scientists are in the middle of this slide. So the world is full of data, as you know, and especially in the world of medicine and biology, with genomes and microbiomes and clinical information. The world's full of data that can be useful if you can figure out how to use it. And so that's what we data scientists do. And this slide is just sort of, this came up in a book that I was reading about data visualization. It has nothing to do with my work, but it speaks to me about what we do. So we, in the first left blue circle, that's data. That's where you, like in your chemistry classes and biology, you capture data in your computers and your notebooks. And so you begin to gather things. It comes off instruments or it comes out of computer records. And then when you move to the right a little bit, you get to a place where you begin to organize it. So maybe it's a spreadsheet, or it's a database, or it's a series of technology that helps you organize that in a way that makes sense. And then if you go to the right a little bit, you get to knowledge. And so that's where you begin to integrate all this information and come up with new ideas and discoveries that's contained in all of this information. So in my world, people don't want databases, they want knowledge bases, so we try to be there. And then if you go a little bit further, you go to wisdom, and so I have never been to wisdom, so I hope to get there someday. But our job as data scientists is to drive this cycle as far to the right as we can to support medical research. So an example of this is, let's think about a new drug for cancer. So we have a group of patients who are newly diagnosed with lung cancer, for instance, and we have a new drug that we've tested in the lab. So we're going to give this drug to our patients, and we do a randomized clinical trial, meaning some patients randomly and blindly get the medication and some do not, and then we gather all the data. And in this case, in our experiment, we see that this drug was 20% effective. So for 20% of the patients, they were helped. They had a regression of their tumors, and for the other 80%, there was no effect. So that doesn't sound so great. It's only 20%. So I'm not sure what to do about that, and this is where data science come in. So on the left, you have hypothesis-driven science, which is your traditional science. So I have a hypothesis. This is my idea, and I test it in an experiment, and I gather all my data, and I analyze it, and I come up with an answer to support or disprove my hypothesis. And in our world, we add a piece before that. So we bring in all the data that we can We look for patterns, we integrate it all, we try to figure out what it could mean, and then drive into the hypothesis and so on. So these methods don't exclude each other, they're complementary. And what does that mean for this patient, this group of lung cancer patients that we have? So let's try the same experiment with a different approach. So we have our group of lung cancer patients, and we're going to get all the data that we can on them and try to integrate that. So we look at their genomes, so their whole genome of DNA, and their exomes of DNA, so that's the part of DNA that gets expressed into proteins that make all the things happen in your bodies. We look at their RNA, we look at their microbiome, which is the bacteria and the flora that naturally live in your body and have influence over your health and your reaction to drugs. Clinical information, what sort of cancer history do you have personally in your family? So we put all this information together and we discover, so in this case, there are actually 3 groups of patients who cluster together with similar characteristics in all of those biological and molecular ways. So now we try that experiment again, and we give everybody the drug, and what we find is that this drug is actually effective for 100% of the people in the 3rd group. So it's still 20% effective, but now that we understand a lot about that patient, that 20% of patients are fully supported by that new drug. So what that means for our new patient is, in comes our individual new patient, and so we say, okay, give us your blood and give us other specimens, and we're going to find out everything we can about your metabolism and your cancer history and your pathology and your genomics. And what we come up with in this case is that this patient looks a lot like group C, and so we can give this patient the drug and she's helped by that. So any drugs that you give, especially for cancer, have side effects, so you don't want to give it to everybody necessarily for a 20% effect, but you sure do want to give it to the people who are helped by that. And that's where the data comes in and can help you understand your population and what will be effective. So this is called translational medicine or precision medicine, and this is the sort of work that we do. So you're saying, hey, wait a minute, right? So where are the spaceships and the planets and all of this? So it looks like biology to me. So my rover then takes me to the NASA Jet Propulsion Lab, and I put a little palm tree there because it's in Pasadena, California, which is not too shabby, especially in the winter in New England. And the NASA Jet Propulsion Lab, if you don't know much about it, was founded in the 1930s because literally 3 students at Caltech, which is the sister organization, were blowing up the dorm. They were so interested in rockets that they were putting them together and exploding things, and the faculty couldn't have that, so they shuffled them off to a little isolated place outside of Pasadena, and that grew into the Jet Propulsion Lab, which is an extraordinary place. So they have a long history of firsts. So the first soft landing on Mars, first a presence on Mars since 1997. We just saw the InSight go up and land on Mars. That will teach us more about the red planet. And one of my favorites is the Voyager 2. So I just read this week that the Voyager is exiting our heliosphere. So it's moving out into interstellar space. It was launched in 1977. You were not born, most of you, but I remember that. And it's still returning data to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So 1 byte every 9 minutes comes in. It's so far away, but it's still returning information about what's out there in our galaxy and now in interstellar space. So the point, the main goal of the Jet Propulsion Lab is to build unmanned spacecraft that go out into the atmosphere, so that can be satellites or rovers that go to planets, or satellites that measure gravity on Earth, so we can learn about climate and water content. And the other major function that they have is to gather all the data in the galaxy. So here's my rover again landing, and I'm just going to put a little clip on to show a little bit more about my rover.
They're looking good. Vehicle reports entry interface. At this time, begin pressurizing the propulsion system to increase the thrust of the system. We use that for all maneuvering in the atmosphere. We're about to do. We're standing by for guidance start of guided entry. atmosphere as we go in here. The vehicle just reported via tones that it has started guided entry. At this time, the vehicle is speeding 0 to 80 targets. We have seen peak deceleration. And it's starting its first negative. It's reported that we are seeing G's on the order of 11 to 12 per seat. We are now getting telemetry from off-state. We should have parachute deploy around Mach 1.7. Parachute is deployed. We are decelerating. Fuel has separated and we're found the ground command. We're down to 90 meters per second at an altitude of 6.5 kilometers per second. Standing by for backshot separation. We are in powered flight. We're at an altitude of 1 kilometer per second. Standing by for sky crane. Sky crane instructions.
Remain strong.
Touchdown confirmed. Receive online.
Parang drive.
Okay, so that doesn't get old for me. I think it's incredibly exciting. It was all new engineering. So the reality is that despite all that mind-blowing engineering, it's only useful if you can handle the data that those rovers and satellites send back. So that's the role of Jet Propulsion Lab, and they've developed a deep space exploration that's supported by a deep space network of systems and methodology to handle the big data, so images and readings and flow information that come back from these rovers, and it all comes into mission control at Jet Propulsion Lab, which is a very cool place to be because all the information is coming in from Mars and satellites all over the galaxy. And so what does that mean for medicine and for biology? So our idea was to take all of those methods and technology used to understand the massive data in the galaxy and apply it to medicine. So things like using the algorithms that the Jet Propulsion Lab scientists use to understand features on the surface of Mars that you can't see with your eye. We run on pathology slides and radiology slides to find patterns in that information that you wouldn't see necessarily with your eye. And so it's another first for NASA, working in medicine. And it becomes, important when you think about the reality of pathology and radiology. So this is a paper that was published. And when you bring this up, the radiologists just put their head down. But these folks trained pigeons to recognize patterns in radiology and pathology images, and they did quite well, actually. So what that tells me is that, number one, pigeons are really smart, but number two, pattern recognition is really important. So we can use those algorithms to support the decision-making and diagnoses that physicians make. And we do this using planetary data systems and applying it to things like National Cancer Institute funded networks that look for cancer biomarkers and pre-diagnostically, so can you draw blood or swab your cheek and tell if cancer is growing somewhere? To look at overdiagnosis of cancer, so the second consortium that we work in looks at overdiagnosis. So this is a phenomenon that happens because people get scanned a lot these days. You get an MRI or you get a CAT scan, and you see things on there. And so are these things that you need to treat, or are these things that you don't need to treat? And overtreatment has a lot of very negative side effects, and we're trying to understand whether those tumors are indolent, meaning that they're not going to grow, or whether they're progressive and going to become malignant before they're treated. So, as it was said, this work gave us the Group Achievement Award from NASA. So across all NASA every year they pick a couple of achievements to honor. So I actually put this up. It feels a little funny to me, so not to brag, but I never thought my name in the NASA seal would be on anything in the same place. So you never know where your rover's going to take you. Goes to the National Cancer Institute, where we work on the Cancer Moonshot. So it's a total coincidence that it's called the Moonshot. So this was the 21st Century Care Act that President Obama put through, and it provides a lot of money for cancer researchers. And it's coincidence that the Moonshot, but I love that part of that. So where else has my rover taken me? So in work with the National Cancer Institute, we do a lot of studies that take place all over the world. And one that I've been involved in for more than 10 years is in Bangladesh. So I've had the opportunity to go to rural Bangladesh and try to implement a study of looking at 2,000 subjects. So in Bangladesh, just like here in New Hampshire, there's arsenic naturally in the soil. So in the 1970s, Bangladesh became independent, and the World Health Organization went in and put 2 wells in the ground to stop deaths from diarrheal disease, and up comes the arsenic through those pipes. So nobody understood that it was, just like here in New Hampshire, lots of arsenic in the soil. So people have ingested arsenic, and it gives them what's called keratosis, which is sort of on their palms and feet, things that look sort of like warts, hardening, and melanosis, which is blotches on the skin that predispose them to skin cancer. So they're a perfect population to study ways to prevent skin cancer. So we've been all over the world and now all over the galaxy finding new ways and new technologies, new populations to study cancer and the prevention of cancer. So the question that started all of this is what drives me? So first, it's really hard challenges. So I grew up sort of too late in the timeline of history to be an explorer, so I get to be sort of a molecular explorer instead of a world explorer, and so that allows me to look at questions that are very hard and try to figure out how to solve them with some of the smartest people on the planet. So it's a very exciting job to have. So I love math and science, so every day I get to do math and science. What I really love is biology, but what I'm better at is math. So this way I can apply my math skills to something that is really meaningful to me, and that is, what really motivates me is making people's lives better. So stopping cancer before it starts, helping patients and groups of patients to be cured and make their lives a little bit better. So just a couple of thoughts as I was putting this together. So in our climate today, in our political climate, it's very contentious, and there's a lot of behavior that I find distressing. And I just want to express that in science, it's a very competitive world. So the National Cancer Institute or the NIH has a certain amount of funds. Many people compete for those funds, but ultimately we all have a higher goal of stopping cancer. So whatever we're funded to do, we release all the information, we release all our technology to the community as a whole, so all together we can make progress in fighting this disease. You don't need to know where your rover is going to take you. In fact, it's okay not to know. Just follow your curiosity, be curious, and that will take you to interesting places and hopefully into a career that you can love every day and be challenged by every day. There are many ways to skin the cat, so maybe you don't love math and science, but this sort of work appeals to you. You can come at this from political science, so and law, how do you influence the NIH to put more funds into cancer research and to organize programs around new areas of biology and microbiology? Public health, so how can you make sure that there's equity in the way cancer patients are treated? No matter where you are, your socioeconomic status, you should have the ability to be treated at a high level. And scientific writing, so make sure what goes in the New York Times is really true and makes sense. Statistics, on and on. So you don't have to do the hardcore science to have an impact in the world in this area. And lastly, recognize that you have great teachers who support and foster your curiosity, and great parents who let you come support your coming to a school like this, which is really extraordinary. So my rover here has taken me to St. Thomas Aquinas High School, and I'm really grateful for that, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you a little bit about what drives me and what I do. And a special thank you to Isabel for allowing me to be here and to speak to you all. So thank you very much.
You may not be aware, this is very fortuitous, I was not entirely aware of the topic, but last year we got together and we made plans to develop a data science course, which Mr. Slavin, wherever you are, Mr. Slavin, will be piloting next semester. Because the world is awash in data, and the data science course is to train kids to learn how to read the data, to interpret the data, and to tell the data story. And it applies, as Mrs. Anton mentioned, across all the disciplines. Mr. Cullen in the admissions department and I are always looking at numbers because they tell us a story. So thank you very much for everything that you're doing.